Hi everyone, this is Ruchi Kulkarni and today we are going to do the chapter The Accidental Tourist, which is written by Bill Bryson, and this chapter is taken from class 9th book Moments. We all love to travel and create memories, but the main character of today's story, Bill Bryson, is such a clumsy person that whenever he travels, he creates a chaos. He tries to behave in a sophisticated manner but is unable to do so and ends up spilling drinks, smearing his face with ink, and creating a mess on the dining table. Let's read and understand his humorous traveling experiences in this chapter, The Accidental Tourist. Later on, we'll discuss the significance of the title, the moral, summary, and question answers. But first, let me throw some light on the author's life. William Maguire Bryson, also known as Bill Bryson, was born on 8th of December 1951 in Iowa, US. He is an American-British author of books on travel, the English language, science, and other non-fiction topics. His notable books are The Penguin Dictionary of Troublesome Words, The Lost Continents, The Mother Tongue, Neither Here Nor There, Notes from a Small Island, and many more. His international bestseller, A Short History of Nearly Everything, in 2003, is widely acclaimed for its accessible communication of science and has since been adapted for children. He also served as the Chancellor of Durham University from 2005 to 2011. They say that the world today is a small place because travel has become easy. But not everybody finds it easy to travel. Here, the author reflects humorously his experiences as a traveler. Humorously means in a joking manner. Let's read this chapter and know the experiences of Bill Bryson as a traveler. Of all the things I am not very good at, living in the real world is perhaps the most outstanding. I am constantly filled with wonder at the number of things that other people do without any evident difficulty that are pretty much beyond me. Evident means visible. I cannot tell you the number of times that I have gone looking for the lavatory in a cinema. Lavatory means a toilet, for instance, and ended up standing in an alley on the wrong side of a self-locking door. Alley is a narrow passage between or behind the buildings. And self-locking door is a door that gets locked automatically. My particular specialty now is returning to hotel desks 2 or 3 times a day and asking what my room number is. I am, in short, easily confused. I was thinking about this the last time we went en famille. En famille is a French phrase which means with one's family. On a big trip. It was at Easter and we were flying to England for a week. When we arrived at Logan Airport in Boston and were checking in, I suddenly remembered that I had recently joined British Airways frequent flyer program. I also remembered that I had put the card in the carry-on bag that was hanging around my neck. And here's where the trouble started. At the beginning of this chapter, the author tries to explain what his situation is like. He feels that the most challenging thing in this world is to live in this real world. While other people are very easily able to live their life, they have no problems, the author has got lots of problems. For example, whenever he wanted to look for a toilet in a cinema hall, he would end up standing in a passage on the other side of a self-locking door. That is, instead of going to the toilet, he would have gone outside the hall. Similarly, his latest confusion is that he forgets his room number and 2 or 3 times a day he has to go to hotel desk or reception to get his number. So in short, the author Bill Bryson is easily confused and he cannot get things well planned or going for himself very nicely. He then tells about another incident when with family he had gone on a big trip. It was Easter time and they were going to England. When they arrived at the Logan airport in Boston and they were checking in, he suddenly remembered that he had British Airways frequent flyer program. Frequent flyer program is a program where people who travel frequently on that airways get some points. But he also remembered that he had put that card in the carry-on bag. Carry-on bag is a bag which people can carry inside the aircrafts into the cabin. And he says that that was the time when the trouble started. Now let's read ahead to know in what kind of trouble he gets. The zip on the bag was jammed. Jammed means stuck. So I pulled on it and yanked at it with grunts and frowns and increase in consternation. Yanked means pulled with a jerk and consternation means anxiety. I kept this up for some minutes but it wouldn't budge. So I pulled harder and harder with more grunts. Grunts means making low sounds. Well, you can guess what happened. Abruptly, the zip gave away. Abruptly means suddenly. The side of the bag flew open and everything within, newspaper cuttings and other loose papers, a 14-ounce tin of pipe tobacco, magazines, passport, English money, film, was extravagantly ejected over an area about the size of a tennis court. Extravagantly means in an excessive manner and ejected means poured out. I watched dumbstruck as 100 carefully sorted documents came raining down in a fluttery cascade. Dumbstruck means surprised and fluttery cascade means falling down with fluttering sound, just like a waterfall. Coins bounced to a variety of noisy oblivions. Oblivions means insensibility, which does not make any sense. And the now lidless tin of tobacco rolled crazily across the concourse, disgorging its contents as it went. Concourse means an open central area in a large public building. And here it's an airport. And disgorging means discharging or coming out. So now when the author was trying to search for his frequent flyer card in his carry-on bag, the trouble started. The zip of the bag was so jammed that when he tried to pull it forcefully, it wasn't opening. And then when he tried another time, the zip totally came out. And whatever was inside the bag, all the newspaper cuttings, the loose papers, the tin of tobacco, which was used for pipes, magazines, passport, English money, film, everything dropped on the floor. And that hall was about a size of tennis court. All the people around the author just watched him surprisingly about what was happening there. The documents were coming down like a waterfall. There was noise of the coins. The coins just rolled and the tin of the tobacco rolled crazily on the floor and all the contents were spilled on the floor. My tobacco, I cried in horror, thinking what I would have to pay for that much tobacco in England now that another budget had come and gone, and then changed the cry to my finger, my finger. As I discovered that I had gashed my finger on the zip. Gashed means hurt. And was shedding blood in a lavish manner. I'm not very good around flowing blood generally, but when it's my own, well, I think hysterics are fully justified. Hysterics means emotional reaction. Confused and unable to help, my hair went into panic mode. It was at this point that my wife looked at me with an expression of wonder, not anger or exasperation. Exasperation means irritation, but just simple wonder, and said, I can't believe you do this for a living. When the author saw that his entire quantity of tobacco was spilled on the floor, he cried in horror, and he just thought how costly that tobacco would be in England. And then just at that moment, he realized that his finger was stuck in the zip and it got hurt. There was a lot of blood which was shedding from the finger. Now, usually he doesn't get very hysteric when he sees blood flowing, but when he himself was hurt and his finger was bleeding, at that time he gave a very emotional reaction. He was confused and he was standing there helpless. His hair had gone into a panic mode, means his hair had become unruly. They had stood up in that panic mode. And at that time, his wife looked at him with an expression of wonder. There was no irritation or no anger on her face. She just wondered that how come he came there with a tin of tobacco and how come he always landed up in one or the other kind of difficulty. But I am afraid it is so. I always have catastrophes when I travel. Catastrophes means disasters. Once on an aeroplane, I leaned over to tie a shoelace just at the moment someone in the seat ahead of me threw his seat back into full recline. Recline means lie down, and found myself pinned helplessly in the crash position. It was only by clawing the leg of the man sitting next to me, clawing means holding with hands, that I managed to get myself freed. On another occasion, I knocked a soft drink onto the lap of a sweet little lady sitting beside me. Knocked means spilled. The flight attendant came and cleaned her up and brought me a replacement drink, and instantly I knocked it onto the woman again. To this day, I don't know how I did it. I just remember reaching out for the new drink and watching helplessly as my arm, like some cheap prop in one of those 1950s horror movies with a name like the Undead Limb, violently swept the drink from its perch and onto her lap. Perch means be situated or kept. The lady looked at me with the stupefied expression you would expect to receive from someone whom you have repeatedly drenched, and uttered an oath. Drenched means wet through and uttered means said. That started with oh, finished with sake, and in between had some words that I have never heard uttered in public before. Certainly not by a nun. A nun is a woman of religious community. The author here says that he is so afraid that whenever he travels, there is always some or the other kind of disaster. Another experience was on an airplane. When he was tying his shoelace, he bent down. The passenger who was sitting in the front seat just threw his seat back to lie down. Means the seat was reclined as if he wanted to lie down and it had straightened. But what happened was that the narrator got stuck under the seat and he could not come out. So in order to come out or to free himself, he had to hold on to his next co-passenger's leg so tightly that it hurt the other person as well. There was another occasion when he was traveling on the airplane. He spilled a glass of soft drink onto the lap of a lady who was sitting beside him. The flight attendant came there. She cleaned the lady who was sitting beside the author and offered another drink to the author. But then again, the second time as well, the author spilled that drink again onto the lady who was sitting beside her, the same lady who was sitting beside him. And that time he remembered that his arm was so helpless and out of control that it looked like a cheap prop which was used in horror movies during 1950s. And the name of the horror movie as an example is also given here, The Undead Limb. Limb is an organ like a leg or a hand. So just like in that horror movie, they show that a limb is so helpless that it moves out of control. Similarly, because of his uncontrollable hand, he spilled that drink which was kept on the tray and it fell onto that lady's lap. The lady who was sitting beside him, who was drenched twice or got wet twice with the soft drink, uttered certain words which the author had not heard in public places by a nun, because that lady was a religious woman. This, however, was not my worst experience on a plane flight. My worst experience was when I was writing important thoughts in a notebook, buy socks, clutch drinks carefully, etc., sucking thoughtfully on the end of my pen as you do, and fell into conversation with an attractive lady in the next seat. I amused her for perhaps 20 minutes with a scattering of urbane bon mots. Scattering means a few, urbane means something related to sophisticated and polite, and bon mot is a French expression which means a witty remark. Then retired to the lavatory, where I discovered that the pen had leaked and that my mouth, chin, tongue, teeth, and gums were now a striking, scrub resistant navy blue and would remain so for several days. So you will understand, I trust, when I tell you how much I ache to be sauve. Ache means hurt or wanting, and sauve means sophisticated or polite. I would love, just once in my life, to rise from a dinner table without looking as if I have just experienced an extremely localized seismic event. Here, seismic event is a natural disaster, and here, as an example, it is used for an earthquake. Get in a car and close the door without leaving 14 inches of coat outside. Wear light colored trousers without discovering at the end of the day that I have at various times sat on chewing gum, ice cream, cough syrup, and motor oil. But it is not to be. The author now explains his worst experience on plane. While he was traveling on an airplane, he was writing some important thoughts in a notebook. And these thoughts were what to do and what not to do. And while he was writing, he was sucking at the end of his pen. Just as you do when you are thinking, you suck the end of the pen while thinking and writing, isn't it? In the same manner, the author was also doing. And again, while he was doing so, he started to converse or talk with an attractive lady who was sitting just beside him. For 20 minutes, he must have entertained her with some very sophisticated and polite, witty remarks in French. And after that, when he went to the toilet, he realized when he saw himself in the mirror that the ink from the pen had leaked and his mouth, chin, tongue, teeth and gums, they were all colored in navy blue because the ink had smudged all over his face and he looked like a joker. And even after scrubbing that ink for several days, it did not go. The author tells us that he wants to be so polite and sophisticated in his manner or in his behavior that just for once he would love to get up from the dining table without looking as if there has been an earthquake. Like when there is an earthquake, everything spills and everything falls down. In the same manner, whenever he is eating at the dining table, he spills everything or he drops so much of food on the dining table, it looks as if some earthquake had occurred. For once, he wants to get inside a car and close the door without leaving a part of his coat outside the door hanging. For once, he wants to live that he had sit on chewing gum, ice cream, cough syrups and motor oil, and all these things have smudged his light colored trousers so badly that they looked so untidy. So the author desires a life where he does not get into any kind of trouble and he lives just peacefully and happily as other people do. But then he feels that maybe he's not supposed to get that kind of a life. Now on planes, when the food is delivered, my wife says, "Take the lids off the food for daddy," or "Put your hoods up, children. Daddy is about to cut his meat." Of course, this is only when I am flying with my family. When I am on my own, I don't eat, drink or lean over to tie my shoelaces. and never put a pen anywhere near my mouth. I just sit very, very quietly, sometimes on my hands to keep them from flying out unexpectedly and causing liquid mischief. It's not much fun, but it does at least cut down on the laundry bills. I never get my frequent flyer miles, by the way. I never do. I couldn't find the card in time. This has become a real frustration for me. Everyone I know, everyone is forever flying off to Bali first class with their air miles. I never get to collect anything. I must fly 100,000 miles a year, yet I have accumulated only about 212 air miles divided between 23 airlines. The author says that now, when the food is delivered on planes and he is flying with his family, his wife tells his kids to take off the lid from the food cans so that the author will not accidentally flip that lid onto somebody's face. She also tells the children to put their hoods. Hoods are the head covering part of a jacket, to put that hood up on their head because the author or their daddy is about to cut his meat. That is because when the author cuts the meat, it is very likely that the meat will fly off onto other people's head. So because he puts himself into so much of trouble, the wife told their children to be really careful. This only happens when the author is flying with his family. But when he is flying alone, at that time he doesn't drink, he doesn't eat, he doesn't bend over to tie his shoelaces so as to get stuck between the two seats. He never puts a pen anywhere near his mouth so that the mouth will not get stained by ink. He will just sit quietly. Sometimes he sits on his own hands so as to control, because then with his hands he may spill the drink on his co-passenger's lap. And after doing all this, he says that it is not that the traveling becomes much fun, but at least it cuts down the bill of laundry, the bill of dry cleaning the clothes. Whenever he is traveling, he never gets his frequent flyer miles. Like in the beginning of the chapter also, I told you frequent flyer miles are the points which a person gets when he travels on airplane. And when a person can accumulate certain amount of points, at that time he can travel for free to certain destination. This kind of thing was never meant for the author because he never found his card on time, using which he can claim his frequent flyer miles, and that had become a real frustration for him because whosoever he knew was flying off or going to Bali in first class using their air miles. But on the other hand, the author was never able to collect anything. For going to Bali, he had to collect at least 100,000 miles a year. But in that year, he had collected only 212 miles, although he had traveled in 23 airlines. Now, why had he collected only these many air miles? Let's read further. This is because either I forget to ask for the air miles when I check in, or I remember to ask for them, but the airline then manages not to record them, or the check-in clerk informs me that I am not entitled to them. Entitled means become eligible. In January, on a flight to Australia, a flight for which I was going to get about a zillion air miles. Zillion is an extremely large quantity. The clerk shook her head when I presented my card and told me I was not entitled to any. Why? The ticket is in the name of B. Bryson and the card is in the name of W. Bryson. I explained to her the close and venerable relationship between Bill and William, but she wouldn't have it. Venerable means respected. So I didn't get my air miles and I won't be flying to Bali first class just yet. Perhaps just as well, really. I could never go that long without eating. Now here the author explains the why he was never able to get those air miles. One thing was that whenever he checked in, he either forgot to ask for them about the airline and then not record them, or the check-in clerk would inform him that he was not eligible to get them. In January, when he was traveling on a flight to Australia, he gathered a lot of air miles from that flight. And when he presented his card to the clerk told him that he is again not eligible. The reason was that the ticket had his name as B. Bryson, which is Bill Bryson, while on the other hand, the name on the card was W. Bryson or William Bryson. Now the author tried to tell the clerk that both the names are of the same person, that is himself only. He is called William Bryson as well as Bill Bryson, but the clerk did not believe it. And at the end, he did not get any air miles and he would never be flying to Bali. But then he feels that not flying to Bali is also in a way a good thing, because now that he had stopped eating on airplanes during the journey, it would be nice because Bali's flight is very long and he cannot go that long without eating. The title, The Accidental Tourist, is significant because it signifies characteristics of a man named Bill Bryson who travels a lot but cannot manage to ever have a safe and accident-free journey. Every time he gets into a trouble unknowingly. The title signifies the accidental nature of Bill Bryson, who is a frequent flyer. He creates a lot of chaos while traveling, and his attempts to be sophisticated end up in vain. He is so mismanaged that he always gets into an embarrassing situation. In this chapter, he recounts the accidents he experienced while traveling, and therefore he is given the title The Accidental Tourist. The story is based on the theme that it is important to be well planned and organized while traveling. In the absence of preparations before setting off, the traveler is bound to encounter accidents. Bill Bryson's experiences teach us a lesson to be careful in front of others so as not to get into embarrassing situations with our co-travelers. So this is where I will wrap up my session, and I'll be flashing the summary and question answers related to this chapter very soon. I'll see you again in my next video with a new topic as usual. Till then, take good care of yourself, travel safe, be safe, and God bless you. Goodbye.